After a pretty hard day driving Carnage the day before, we were up early again for our next day here in Coffs. Due to Vikki's Jeep braking on Carnage, she was riding shotgun with Stephen, and on John's Hilux we still tried to troubleshoot the winch. Based on the experience from the first 2 days, it wasn't going to be a boring day.
I came from the mud, there's dirt on my hands, strong like a tree, there's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the law.
Bit of winch troubleshooting, trying to get the solenoid out, having a look at that, see whether any cables loose. One thing left unchecked was this inline disconnect, and that turned out to be the culprit, as John found out later while further troubleshooting at home. First track of the day, broken, the track is called. No justice to the steepness. The ruts are quite deep, so the portal certainly will help.
Crazy gearing.
Eric here, yeah.
I reckon just stay in the ruts and just give it a bit of a runner.
I hope he can't go anywhere. Go, 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 go! Yeah, see? Stephen's 33-inch tires were no match for that deep ruts, and he just didn't have enough diff clearance. So out came the winch. It's going to feel sketchy now. Now you gotta bump it. That's it. Next it was my turn in John's Hilux. And some people say four-wheel driving is not a sport. I mean, together with filming the amount of damage we take climbing up and down that hills, filming sometimes running up and down 3-4 times, it's definitely a sport in my book. Thanks a lot to Steve for doing the hard yards here on my drive. This shows a little bit the off-camber section coming up. It looks actually a bit worse than it is. But again, like most things in Coffs, this track is steep and the video does not do it justice. I said it before, but I would compare Coffs to the high country on steroids, moved in a kind of subtropical climate. It is as steep as the high country, but it has far more challenging tracks and far more obstacles and rocky stuff than the high country. Next in line was Curdy in the mighty 4.2 Patrol, and he was on a mission this morning not to get stuck on the first track, and he did it with ease and a little bit of gusto. Slow, slow.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from
Bit of rainforest here again. Stunning.
Some mechanical lessons.
Yeah, the water and fuel lights just come on. So.
Did you fill up last night or no?
BP Bulladilla.
Yeah, on the way down to
Carnage. Going down the creek.
Oh.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the Lord. Hope they won't shoot me down soon. They sleep on a sleepless night. Try to catch me
While this was not a crazy trek, I can only say one thing. These treks in Coffs are steep. The trek to Wongolga Creek used to be a loop trek, but supposedly it has become very difficult to get through the creek bed, and on the other side the exit is very steep and can only really be attempted in the dry. While we wanted to scout it at the bottom and see what we could do, it was pretty evident that the trek hasn't been driven in quite some time. What is a bit hard to see is that the ground is fairly wet, it is steep, and there are some pretty sizable ruts. So I was interested to see how Steve with the 33-inch tires would make it back out.
Yeah, so this is where we winch people down. We used to be able to drive out of the creek up here, but the exit out of the creek's getting too steep.
Yes.
So most people don't bother coming down here now. Very, very slippery.
It is! The objective was no winching! One of the stipulations for the day was no winching, because the winch on John John's car was still not working. Again, it doesn't look like it. But interesting side angles there, off-camber steps.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots.
Do that.
The whole trek, one way, is only 300 meters long.
Straddle this. Steering. Goodbye. Rest a little bit. Yes, yes, yes. How's that?
Driving this trek, it felt like you're somewhere in the jungles of Borneo or the likes. It pays to watch these kind of low-hanging vines, very easy to rip your snorkel off, or as I have seen before, a whole roof rack if you have one. It was certainly quite slippery when going back up, and if Eric with the portals has issues, you know you're in some kind of trouble. The rut somehow felt much deeper than when we were descending. However, Eric, John and myself, we both had 37-inch tires, and tire diameter certainly made a difference here. The maxi trapdoors also did help in that soft, muddy soil. Eric, myself and John made it out. However, Kurt and Tim and then Vikki and Steve in the back had a few more issues. So we probably had a half an hour, 45-minute break on top and waited for the guys to sort it out at the bottom. There really was no point for us to go down and try to help, as turning around would have been nearly impossible unless we drove down all the way to the bottom again. From here we followed Vails Ridge Road and went back down to Wongolga Creek.
We're gonna have to get up on the bank there or something. You're hiding in the bushes again.
Yes.
The river entry and exit was far more manageable here than at the Wattle Scrub Road. It was a little bit eerie when the bright sunny day on top of the hills changed into slow darkness the deeper we descended into the ravines. After the first crossing came a second smaller crossing, however the exit was fairly rutted and slippery. While it is not a scientific comparison, but over the 4 days with a lot of slippery and clayey terrain, the very narrow tires on Stephen's car did not seem to outperform any of the wider tires. For example, a Curdy with a 34.5s, and myself and Eric obviously with 37s. Vikki with the 35s. The narrow tires, even when diff clearance was no issue, did definitely not outperform the bit wider tires. Eric with 37s and Portals had no issues on that rut. However, Curdy with 35s did not have enough diff clearance. However, the rut ridge was fairly soft, so it just needed a little bit momentum and plowing. seen before that Curdy struggled with the 35s, it was clear that Stephen with the 33s would not have enough diff clearance, so he had to take a different line, which meant straddling these uneven-sided ruts. This is usually no problem when the track is dry. However, on a slippery track like this, that certainly can go wrong and the car can slip into the rut. A good spotter, and as important, a driver who follows the directions of the spotter, makes all the difference. This is the end of day 3 of our 4-wheel drive Gypsies Coffs Harbour tour. It was another awesome day, and thanks a lot again to Eric for showing us around and leading us on these 4 days. Keep your eyes peeled for the final episode of our Coffs Harbour trip, and as always guys, if you enjoy my videos, please help me out, like, share, subscribe, and if you can afford it, shout me a cup of coffee by becoming one of my Patreon supporters. See you along the tracks.